Brew Strong is brought to you by Blickman Engineering, home of the Riptide. Visit them online at blickmanengineering.com.
Brewers, it's time for the beer radio you've been looking for. This is the show that dispels myths, tackles the toughest topics, and makes no apologies for geeking out on beer. Hosted by two guys that drink before they think. Jamil and John Palmer. This is Brew Strong.
Hey, howdy, hey, my brewing brothers and sisters.
Greetings, Cretans.
It's always a joy to see you, John.
Thank you very much, Jamil. Wish I could see your happy mug today.
Well, let's try. Let's see what happens. I'll turn it on. We'll see if it starts glitching again or not. I
Grinds
think
to a halt.
Might be better now with
yeah.
We'll see. All right. Let's see.
A little Q&A today, eh?
A little Q&A today. You know, every time I'm with John Blickman, it generally becomes a Q&A session at some point.
Oh, yeah.
Lots of questions, lots of answers. And a good 90% of it has to do with brewing. The other 10%, you know.
Very true.
Blickman. So it's always a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun hanging out with that guy. I like it. I guess the Homebrewers Conference is going to be in Pittsburgh this year. Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
That's right.
And I'm assuming Mr. John Blickman is going to be there, and he'll have something new and cool to reveal to the brewing world, like he usually does. I'm sure he's working on something genius. You can check out all their stuff, blickmanengineering.com. They got a great website, shows a lot of the goodies we're talking about. They've also got the Anvil series, which is their more, cost effective, fewer bells and whistles, line, that they've got available too. I've got something for everybody. So check them out. Ask for it at your local homebrew shop. Blickman Engineering, innovating your brew day. Great stuff. Great people. All right. We get in questions from y'all. You can send your questions to brewstrong@thebrewingnetwork.com, and we will eventually get to them. It really only takes a few years. Sometimes it takes a couple of days. Sometimes it takes a decade. We've been doing this show. JP was telling me our show in Reno was our 300th episode of Brew Strong.
Wow.
Time flies when you're having fun.
Yeah. I guess we have to get at least 65 more of those so people can, do a
one a day.
Whole marathon. Yeah, one a day.
You could listen to one a day. There you go. I think you'd be insane at the end if you listened to one a day, but yeah, it's possible. People have been doing a lot of listening. Just like the Good Wrench out of Canada. He wrote to us in December of 2017.
Oh yeah.
He was asking us. He says, contending with clone recipe. Hey y'all, the recent Fuller's episodes were fantastic. I've done a clone recipe for Stone Ruination from Mitch Steele's book. I'll plagiarize it for reference below. I've entered the recipe into Beersmith, and the estimated terminal gravity is 1014, not the 1012 in the book. Hey, this is Mitch we're talking about, so I'm not gonna doubt his math. Should I just run with it as is, or should I tweak the starting gravity, the OG, by reducing base malt or maybe lower the mash temp to ensure the correct terminal gravity in the software? Or should I edit the attenuation of the yeast in Beersmith? Is there something else that I am missing?
Wow, you're overthinking this. Is my first thought.
Yeah.
Final gravity can vary a couple, plus or minus 2, 3, even 4 points due to a lot of factors.
Sure.
Pitching rate, temperature, mash temperature, malt, the particular malt that you happen to use this batch versus the previous batch. All of these can contribute to final gravity variation. So what they're listing in Beersmith is a model. It's a calculation, an estimate. What Mitch listed in the recipe is probably his own experience with his conditions, his yeast, his tanks. So I really wouldn't worry about it. The 1012 is his number. The prediction you got is 1014. I wouldn't be concerned if I brewed that recipe and got 1016.
Well, that's you, John. You're so, loosey-goosey. Let the experience wash over you. What about the rest of us that are all panicked about, a single digit being off, or being off by, 100th?
Well, there's something to be said for consistency. If this is a beer that you're brewing steadily, as a product, then being the 2 points off is
horrific.
Interesting.
Horrific. No, that doesn't fly around here.
Okay. I mean, what kind? How tightly do you try to hold specs like that on your beers?
Oh, just dead nuts on every time. That's what you always. That's what your specification is.
Okay.
Generally in fermentation, we hit the exact same number every time. So sometimes, in the wort production side, they'll, be a little low or a little high, and they tend to correct that with volume. And then, it tends to be blended batches. So it's not a big deal. The final wort is correct. And then fermentation, pH, all that works out exactly. We track that because if it's off, then something's going wrong with the yeast. If pH isn't correct, if on a given day, if the specific gravity isn't correct on a specific day, it follows a very rigid, regular pattern every time. And if you see that pattern vary, that's a good tip for commercial brewers. You should be checking your pH and your gravity every day on fermentation. And if it starts to, and you, let's say the beer works out great and you're happy with it, and then you do it again, and if you see another time that those numbers are varying off of that numbers that you've charted before, then something's gone wrong with the yeast. So it may, maybe you didn't pitch enough, maybe the yeast is, dying, maybe all sorts of problems, but it's generally a yeast issue. I would say make sure you're pitching enough yeast, make sure you're supplying oxygen, all that stuff, and you should see the same terminal gravity. Like John was saying, the prediction in Beersmith, it's an excellent prediction, but it's just that it's a model based off of, this is what, it should work out to be. But I think you'll find that if you replicate the ingredients that Stone uses and you do good brewing practices, you'll find that you'll probably hit the 10-12. If you don't, like John's saying, it's not the end of the world. You're probably not going to notice that much difference between 10-12 or 10-14 when you taste it. You may like it finishing at 10-14, who knows? But I would just give it a try as is. Just make sure you're brewing as well as Mitch Steele does, and it'll turn out fine.
There you go.
There you go. All right. Thanks for the question. All right. Let's take a short break. When we come back, we'll have more of your questions right after this.
Hey, it's Kaylee Cuoco for Priceline. Ready to go to your happy place for a happy price? Well, why didn't you say so? Just download the Priceline app right now and save up to 60% on hotels. So whether it's Cousin Kevin's Kazoo Concert in Kansas City, go Kevin, or Becky's Bachelorette Bash in Bermuda, you never have to miss a trip ever again. So download the Priceline app today. Your savings are waiting.
Go to your happy place for a happy price. Go to your happy price, Priceline.
Are you looking for a simple brewing system that's great for all grain brewing, but everything on the market seems to be full of compromises? Blickman Engineering has the answer. The Blickman Brew Easy All Grain Brewing System. The Brew Easy is a complete system with easy upgrades and a beautiful compact design, perfect for any size brewing location. At its core, the Brew Easy is built on two gorgeous Blickman Boilermaker brew kettles, a high-temperature March pump, and either a top-tier gas burner or the new Boil Coil electric heater. The Brew Easy adapter lid allows the pots to stack on top of each other, forming an efficient, strong, and compact brewing setup that comes in 5, 10, and 20-gallon batch sizes. Upgrade your Brew Easy system with full automated control by adding a Blickman Tower of Power temp controller, and make moving around easy with the Blickman Kettle Cart. The Brew Easy is modular. If you already own a Boilermaker kettle, you can build your Brew Easy by purchasing just the modules you need. The new Brew Easy all-grain brewing system. See it today at BlickmanEngineering.com and brew with Blickman quality on your new Brew Easy.
Back to the two guys that know how to turn beer into beer. This is Brew Strong.
All right, we're back. We're doing some of your questions that you've emailed in over the years. And if you're listening live, you can ask a question right there in that comment section on Facebook. You type in your questions there. John will catch those. Taking place with the lovely Miss Bevo is our own John Palmer. Here is man, we get a lot of listeners in Canada apparently.
Yeah.
This is the Bitchin' Brewing Co. Dean. He was also writing us in August of 2017. I guess I started pulling a lot of 2017. At least I'm not pulling 2011. I mean, I will get to those, but it's just going to take a little time. I wanted to write you guys sooner, but I seem to have gotten the gooch while traveling, which has reduced me to, well, I think Jamil had the same experience a while back after visiting Singapore. It's amazing how the body can convert even the driest of soda crackers into pure liquid, pure liquid evil within minutes. No longer plagued with riding the porcelain hourly and with the ability to stand upright again, here it goes. I've been brewing hop-heavy beers and I have begun bulk buying from a larger Canadian hop supplier to cut cost. So I recently brewed one of my favorite 10-gallon single-hop Citra bombs using only 2 hop additions, 7 ounce of Citra in the 30-minute whirlpool, and then a single 4-ounce charge of Citra in each 5-gallon carboy for 4 days at 67 degrees Fahrenheit once fermentation was complete. I had 2 more ounces of dry hops this time. The hops smelled great before being added, and the beer was clean tasting before the dry hop. I did notice a mildly Columbus sort of aroma at this point, though. Once tapped a couple weeks later, I was blown away by the dank earthiness of it all. It was a fantastic pungent IPA with a somewhat vegetal hop flavor, but I would be hard-pressed to guess that there was any Citra in there at all. Did the 2016 crop of Citra change, or did someone maybe spill a lot of weed in the pelletizer? Is this maybe related to the amount I've used, or do you think it is something entirely different? Many thanks from Canada, Dean. The 2016, I can't remember if it was 2016, but yeah, I think the 2016 crop of Citra was not so bueno. There have been some times when the crop of Citra was kind of off. So much so that people were rejecting some Citra back then. And what happens is, it is an agricultural product. And if you have certain, conditions and the environmental conditions change, rain, wind, sun, all that, it can really mess with, the end product and change it up. Not to say that they're bad hops, but they're different, and they're going to have different oils, different flavors, different aromas. So you got to be careful when purchasing hops. And what I found, and I think it was maybe around the same time, I was in Sweden and at a brewers conference, and people had brought beers that they had brewed. And I remember one guy saying, this is 100% Citra IPA. And I tasted it. I'm just like, that's not Citra. I'm like, are you sure you use Citra? And they're like, well, it comes over from somebody who buys it, in the US. And then I'm like, well, what year was it? And they're like, there's no year on it. There's no alpha acid on it. It's just, it just says Citra on it. So, I don't think people are, packaging up something else and calling it Citra. I imagine there could be horrible people doing that, but I just don't think that's very common. And things have improved in Sweden. I know they've gotten, more, direct to the hop suppliers now. But, once they harvest those hops, even if it, it is Citra, like the best ones, people go and they smell and they select cuts, and then a lot of the rest of it just goes out to everybody else. You may get something that, is very much like that. So I would say it probably was Citra. It probably just was not the best of the Citra crop that year. So, agricultural products.
Yeah. All hops have picking windows where the growers judge that they've reached their peak flavor and they try to harvest them at that time. But, on any particular farm, you can have issues, whether it's, a different crop that needed to be picked that day, that had been too long on the vine, other issues, mechanical failures, whatever. But in other words, if that hop sits on that vine a day or two longer, the oil changes. The amount of oil in the hop increases. That oil can age and oxidize a bit. So even though what I'm trying to say, Jamil, is that particular year of Citra that you remember, that that crop may have suffered from something like that. Maybe it rained a couple of days that week and they had to push back the picking window, and that could have changed the character.
Just the availability of labor is causing problems, because it may mean that they have to pick it a few days later. And I've smelled cuts from the same field, essentially. One harvested, like 2 days before, and one harvested, 2 days later, because the field was so big. And as they go through picking, sometimes it takes multiple days to complete. And just being there an extra couple of days, it was a noticeable difference. It's fascinating how, there's a lot of science and a lot of, artistry that goes into, growing hops, and people do an amazing job of it. But again, agricultural products, so you have to kind of be wary and do your own analysis of stuff. Good question though, Dean. The Rev wrote, "Hi guys, I love the podcast. I started brewing at the end of the year last year and moved from extract to all grain after a few months of listening to your shows." See, this is what we do to people. We end up making them spend money, get extra equipment. My question is this. Lately, after upgrading my mash tun to an 11.5 gallon GOT cooler, I keep missing my OG by a lot. They have been around 1030 to 1037 with my all grain recipes. I assume he's probably averaging, trying to get something like a 1055, 1060 on most people's beers. So he's getting like, 60%.
Yeah.
I have always batch sparged before. I boil the amount needed from Beersmith and then mash for 60 minutes, then drain the tun and then add the sparge water. Let it rest 30 minutes, drain it again, then add the final amount of water. Am I adding too much water, or is Beersmith not working correctly? Thanks for the useful knowledge and can't wait to hear the next show, Rev. Well, the amount of water should be, the amount you need for that batch of beer.
Yeah.
I'd make sure that you're adding the correct amount of water, that you're not mistakenly measuring and adding too much.
Right.
You're measuring your water metric and adding it imperial. You're using inches. when you should be using gallons or something.
Mm-hmm.
Because the got cooler itself should not cause any problems.
Right. And if you are truly batch sparging and truly draining the entire volume, that should take care of any channeling issues or any, preferential extraction. You should be getting, your first runnings depend entirely on your water to grist ratio. So 2 quarts per pound, 1.5 quarts per pound, you should be looking at 1070 on gravity on your first runnings.
Right.
If you take another, half of your boil volume, let's say it's 3 gallons, 4 gallons, maybe you're doing a 10-gallon batch, I don't know. But, it should drop, roughly by half. So 1037 sounds real low. And often problems with batch sparging are people not draining completely and leaving a lot of work behind, which then gets diluted, and they pull it out and then they try to add more water and to get their volume up. And they end up with a very diluted wort that way.
Mm-hmm. Right. And, instead of adding the final amount of water to the kettle, it might be worth, just making sure everything's going through the grain. Yeah. That's got to be the issue. That, or, it may be, the grain that he's using, the base malt. Maybe it's not being crushed properly. Maybe the grain changed from, malted barley to painted styrofoam pellets. Something, I don't know.
It could be a very faulty thermometer and he's not hitting saccharification or, gelatinization temperature.
Right. Check all your measurements. You should be measuring everything, and see what's going on there. Test the first runnings, like John's saying. Take some first runnings and see if what your gravity is there. If that's not up around 1070 or higher, then there's something wrong with the grain and everything else, and maybe temperature.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
There you go. I'll tell you what, if you went up to Brew Chatter out there, if you lived out near Brew Chatter in the lovely Sparks, Nevada, I'm sure they could help you figure this out as well. Great guys, Josh and RJ. They've got all the equipment there. If you need new equipment or you just need to somebody to chat with about how to make great beer, those guys know it, and they're wonderful folks. Love those guys up there. Check them out, brewchatter.com. All right, let's see here. Michael writes, John picked up the new edition today. He's talking about the How to Brew 4th edition. So again, May of 2017. What are you on, edition 36 now?
Yeah. No, we're still on 4.
We're still on 4.
Should be good for a few more years yet.
So this is current information in my hands. Picked up the new edition today. Super excited to dive into all the new information. Skimmed the Brew in a Bag section and saw the stand you made. Can't exactly see how you put it all together, but it looks like a perfect solution. Can you expand on how you join the pieces together? Is it all 2x4s? Thanks, Michael.
Yeah. It was, in fact, all 2x4s. I joined them into T sections, one horizontal, one vertical, and secured them with lag screws. And so, it made a very rigid stand with just a hardware hook at the top in the middle that I could lift the bag out and hang it on there and not have to, get my wife to try to hold it up there for the next half hour to drain. I could just hang it on the hook.
There you go.
Yeah. Lag screws is how I held it together. And that way I could quickly, take a socket wrench and take it apart to store in the corner of the garage.
There you are. All right. Good solution. Let's take a short break. When we come back, we'll have more of your questions right after this.
Learning to brew has never been so disgusting. This is Brew Strong.
All right, we're back. And don't forget, we're live on Facebook when we do these shows, so you can ask your questions live. You just go on there, Facebook on the Brew Network page, and then you'll see a little live video, and you just click on the comments, and you can type in your comments for John, and he will read them off, and there you go.
All right.
Bob's your uncle.
I can even keep you up to date on local weather conditions. Chuck Ferguson reports that it's 20 degrees and there's snow. So.
Chuck. I know Chuck. When Peter and I, we took the RV from here in California and drove all the way to Minnesota for the conference in Minneapolis. And we went through Kansas and met up with Chuck, I think, in Lawrence, Kansas, and went to a beer thing there. But he very kindly came out to the RV and shuttled us back and forth and brought me his barley wine also. It was quite delicious. Good old Chuck. I assume that's the same Chuck.
Yeah, he says he confirms it. Yes.
Yes.
He remembers that trip out to Minnesota.
Nice guy. Yeah, we had a lot of fun out in Kansas. That was one of the highlights of the trip. We went through Denver and all that. That's where I met Chris Kennedy, who became our first brewer at Heretic. Helped me open Heretic. Just a blast. Blast from the past. There you go. Old man just rambling on about his stories. Charlie from Boise, he writes, howdy, I love Brew Strong and all the ridiculous tangents, including the Adam and Eve plugs. Oh, good for you, Charlie. You can disregard my recipe question about a milk stout recipe back in August. Sorry, I didn't quite get to that yet. I have a question about two malts a friend gave me. One is labeled Abbey malt and the other Belgian biscuit malt. I believe both are from more beer, and I'm not sure what beer styles other than Belgians I can use them in, and what characteristics they will contribute to my beer. Can the Belgian biscuit malt be a substitute for regular biscuit malt? Thank you, Charlie.
Abbey Normal, perhaps?
Abbey Normal? That's the Abbey Normal malt, yes. You use it in abnormal beers. Most of these, you can use these in, pale ale. You can use them. It doesn't have to be Belgian. I would say if you are trying to craft true, really good Belgian ales, use some Belgian malts that they would use. If you're trying to make a great British ale, use some British malts. If you're making German beers, make German malts. But in the U.S., you can use any malt in anything. For whatever you're making, and for a lot of the American styles, a biscuit malt is something that you'll find in a lot of IPAs, pale ales, amber ales, browns. Sure, depends on the color of each. And
we should mention that biscuit doesn't mean biscuits from. Like your dumplings or something, or cornbread things.
Or cookies.
They're talking about cookies, and it's a baked cookie kind of flavor. It's the British use of the word biscuit, not the American use.
There you go. So we'll work well in a lot of those.
Mm-hmm. Abbey malt, I guess, is probably a melanoidin malt. Would you think? Not familiar with those generally.
Right. Quite possibly. Might be a crystal malt of some kind.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see here. Sean writes, hi guys, I'm a mechanical engineer and scientifically literate dude, though most of my background is not in biological stuff as much as basic chemistry, physics, etc. I just finished yeast. And it was a and it was fantastic. I was wondering if you had a recommendation for 2 or 3 more books to delve even deeper into yeast and fermentation, preferably with successive complexity, so I can baby step my way to greatness. By the way, Palmer should release a hip hop album called Baby Steppin' My Way to Greatness. I know he rocketed to fame and fortune, but still. He's even got your album art for you.
Yeah, that was a pretty impressive picture. Has me all streeted out.
There it is.
Yeah, that's gold tooth, bling and everything. That's funny.
There you are. Baby stepping your way to greatness.
Yeah.
All right. So what books do you recommend? You've got
for yeast and fermentation.
You've got a lot of stuff on the master brewers.
Yeah.
I would say one of the things to do is to sign up for a master brewers membership. You can sign up. Commercial brewers, you pay one price, but if you're like a student or something like that, they have a nice discounted rate that they provide. You don't have to be necessarily in the industry to participate in that, and they have an archive of amazing information, papers, and stuff like that.
Yeah, we have a 100-year archive of papers, journal articles, all about the science of fermentation and practical brewing. I was trying to think of yeast and fermentation books I'd recommend.
And you're gazing out on the hop field.
Well, yeah, actually, I'm looking over my bookcase here. Charlie Bamforth has several good books. Mm-hmm. Practical Guide to Fermentation. There's a bunch. Some of the more recent books might be something like Historical Brewing Practices. If you're interested in Fike yeast. Michael Tonsmeyer's American Sour Beers. If you're interested in sour fermentations. There's a whole slew of good books out there these days. Any spring to your mind, Jamil?
I'm sure I'll think of 10 after the show's over.
Yeah. Yeah.
There you go. All right. Let's take one more short break and we'll wrap up right after this.
Back to the beer guys that make other beer guys look like wine guys. Brew strong.
All right, we're back. We're doing live Q&A. We're answering your questions and having a lot of fun.
Indeed.
Let's see here. All right. This is a long one. So save it for last. John doesn't say where he's from. But John writes, "Hey guys, I'll start by saying thank you for everything you do for the community. I'll try to keep it short and include the details in a postscript. Over a year ago, something started going wrong with my IPAs, but not any other styles I can tell. They smell and taste great right after fermentation, but then by the time they have bottle conditioned, all hop and malt goodness have disappeared, leaving a bitter, vaguely sweet brew that is not worth drinking. I don't detect any of the classic descriptors of oxidation, though. I've racked my brain trying to figure this out and have conducted several experiments outlined below that seem to rule out bottling procedure, dry hopping, late hopping, and equipment and water issues. What am I not thinking of? Can a sanitation problem only affect hoppy beers? Maybe something involving the yeast? I don't have a meter to read my pH. Could that be the issue? Please help. You're my only hope. Thanks, John."
Interesting. A bitter, slightly sweet.
Yeah, I mean, that to me means oxidation or staling. The only other thing I can think of is maybe, some, diacetyl production or, contamination of some kind. He says
it only seems to affect his IPAs. That's odd.
His typical IPA recipe would include mostly 2-row or maris otter and maybe a little wheat. 60-minute rolling boil with a bittering charge of 40 IBUs or so at the beginning. Within the last 20 minutes or shortly after, I'll throw in a bunch of hops, approaching 1 ounce per gallon, and dry hop with an equal amount. Sometimes I've been careful to keep the break out of the fermenter, and sometimes most of it goes in. Once cooled to the mid-60s, pitch some WLP 001 or 007 from a starter or rehydrated Safale 05, then ramp a few degrees as fermentation slows. Oh, that sounds fine.
Yeah.
He says he's also tried, he's brewed an all extract batch to rule out a problem with the mash.
Okay.
Did a split batch, bottled one, left one in the fermenter. He did a split batch, one dry hopping, one not. He brewed a recipe without any hops, boiled for less than 20 minutes. He used a hop spider to cut down on hop material in the fermenter. Brewed using different equipment. Brewed using filtered tap water with and without mineral and acid additions. Brewed with RO water plus salts and acid. Currently seeing if my long abandoned practice of using a secondary fermenter may have somehow helped me from avoiding this in the past.
Well, yeah, oxidation seems like a good first guess to me as well. Oxidation from, say, the headspace of the keg, if he's kegging, can strip hop aroma pretty quickly in some beers, especially when you're expecting it, and it's not to the level you expected. I also wonder about diastaticus, because that can ferment out a lot of the flavor out of a beer fairly rapidly.
It doesn't affect the flavor that much. It'll really thin it out.
Yeah.
Dry it out,
And he didn't mention gushing or overcarbonation, so maybe not that.
But if it's kegged, a lot of times people don't notice that.
True.
Pulling off pints.
Yeah.
But I would think, that's one of the things, the descriptors for oxidation, if we gotta get away from talking about papery, cardboard, all that,
right.
that is, when you're dealing with really light lager, light, adjunct heavy beers, you might get that. But when you're dealing with most craft beer, where there's a lot more, melanoid and rich flavor and all that, it tends to be more of like a caramel, kind of an oddly sweet caramel character.
Toffee. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's usually one of the things I think, people miss, as oxidation. And that's the most common kind of flavor. And it will have a bit of that sweetness. I mean, pH can affect things, but, it's probably not the issue.
Yeah, I wouldn't think so.
I mean, oxidation or contamination seems like the most likely thing to me.
Yeah. Now, we mentioned sweetness too. And I have had IPAs where, due to hop creep, they were off the yeast, they were getting sweetening of the beer with time.
Right.
And that can be a strange phenomena where your IPA keeps getting sweeter with time.
Well, that's why I was also thinking maybe some diacetyl.
Yeah.
Because that buttery flavor can kind of make it can mute the hops and provide some slickness and some kind of almost sweetness.
That's true.
Well.
Yeah, that could be part of it. Yeah, and of course oxidation could be in combination with that. A little oxygen, a little more hop creep, more diacetyl production, loss in hop aroma plus increase in sweetness or diacetyl, change in flavor.
Well, I mean, what would you do at this point to kind of narrow down the problem? What action should he take?
Well, purging the headspace in the keg to minimize potential oxidation.
Right. Watch your transfers. Keep everything.
Take a sample of the as fermented beer and chill it and keep it very, very cold. for a period of weeks and see if that flavor changes compared to the main batch. Because if it's oxidation related, chilling it down will retard that. If it's hop creep related, chilling it down will retard that. That'd be one way to kind of narrow the field, I think.
Yeah, you do that. You could try doing a force ferment too.
Yeah. If that exhibited changes much
comes
more
on quickly. Yeah. I'd also check the gravity before you package it, and then later on when you experience this problem, check the gravity again and see if it's changed considerably. I mean, one other potential possibility is, maybe just some of the hop compounds are dropping out.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, bittering will drop like 50% over the course of a few months.
Yeah. Different hop batches may make a difference as well.
True.
So, if he's been pulling his IPAs from one big bag this whole time, that could be the cause, could be that particular batch of hops he's using.
Right. I mean, he says it smells and tastes great right after fermentation.
Mm-hmm.
But by the time they have bottle conditioned, all hop and malt goodness have disappeared.
Yeah, hop and malt. I mean, I can see one or the other typically, but having both disappear is unusual.
Well, maybe like you're saying, diastaticus.
Yeah.
I mean, really, it doesn't affect the flavor that much, but it can really thin out a beer.
Yeah. When I've had diastaticus in the past, I mean, I've had beers that ended up tasting like club soda.
Mm-hmm.
It just almost all the malt character goes away, and I've tasted that in competition too.
Right. So yeah, then I think one of the first things to do is to ensure that you're working sanitary. I would, give everything a good hot clean. Look for scratches and things like that may be harboring bacteria or yeasts. Resanitize everything. Just make sure you're, get rid of your plastic tubing and stuff like that.
Check your ball valves.
Check your ball valves. Yeah. Snap yourself off a fresh piece of tubing.
Yeah.
Ball valves is another good point. I used to take my ball valve off of my kettle and put in a little pot of water and boil it for a few minutes. Just so, a lot of times the valve will get hot enough just through conduction with the kettle. But if you're using any ball valves, good idea. And when you clean them, you open the valve just part way. It's like kind of midway, because there's the pocket that the ball rotates in. If you have the ball valve completely open or completely closed, those pockets are not getting cleaned out or exchanged. So you got to always do it partially open. Okay. Other thoughts for him? I really want to help this poor guy. That's all I keep coming back to is it's either oxidation or contamination of some kind.
Yeah.
I think maybe you're right with diastaticus.
Yeah. Hop creep shouldn't affect the malt flavor much. And you could see it, as you said, by checking the final gravity at bottling, and then like a couple weeks later, you can expect a maximum, I think, of like 4 gravity points change in an extreme case. But 2 gravity points change in final gravity could be more indicative for, I could still be hop creep generating some extra sweetness.
Right. Okay. Well, there you go. Do you have any questions from the?
Nope. No new ones there. I think Chuck was our only listener.
Well, there was Brian and Michael.
Yeah. No, they haven't thought of any questions, I guess. They're just happy to be here.
That's all right. Everybody got like 5 minutes notice that we were doing this. So there you go. Well, I certainly had fun. I hope you did.
Me too.
If you're listening live, stay tuned. John and I are going to do a third episode. Yes?
Right. We're going to get a whole bunch of water questions in the next hour.
Yes, it's going to be all water all the time in the next section. Yeah, because we're trying to get caught up and be good podcasters and not be behind.
Right.
So yeah, it'll be fine. Make sure you check out our great sponsors, Blickman Engineering, blickmanengineering.com. You can even send an email to John Blickman at feedback@blickmanengineering.com. Those go direct to him, and you can tell him how much you think of him sponsoring the show. Hopefully good stuff. So you keep paying for it like he has for the last 300 shows. It'd be good to keep him on there. And check out their wonderful stuff at your homebrew shop, at the conference, and online. You can see all that. The Anvil series, the Blickman Engineering series, the top tier series, all that stuff. Great equipment, innovating your brew day. And check out our friends at Brew Chatter, brewchatter.com out in Sparks, Nevada. Good folks, RJ and Josh. Really fun folks with a lot of brewing knowledge and a great shop as well. Until then, everybody, brew strong.
Brew strong.